It's from Vaati. It's going to be a good video, though.
I don't know who Vaati is, so.
He's very big in the Soulsborne community.
Okay.
Mostly focusing around lore and deep dives such as that.
I will trust you.
Never been a big fan of the Souls games.
Okay.
I like enjoying my games.
I mean, I enjoyed it a lot, so.
Just don't die, Fivehead. All right. I'll count us in. 3, 2, 1, go.
As you watch this brand new footage of Armored Core 6,
this apparently is exclusive access.
What do you see?
On YouTube.
Armored Core or Souls?
This looks really fucking good. I want to play this so bad.
Same.
I love Armored Core.
Truth is, there's a bit of both here, honestly.
Well, of course there would be.
The three-dimensional combat.
It's almost like the company has developed a lot in the last decade.
Its familiar mission structure, its atmosphere, and the unrivaled.
Look at 90% of what they've made in the last 10 years.
The mecha genre lays claim to.
Have they made anything besides Souls games in the last 10 years?
There is a lot of Souls influence
they have.
in this. This hard lock-on is not traditional Armored Core. The pacing and the telegraphed attacks would not look out of place in a Souls game. Even the stagger system is basically Sekiro's.
I'm okay with this.
There's a lot I could say right now, but I'm honestly really tired of this whole debate, and I prefer to move on because there is now so much more to talk about instead. So Bandai Namco has given me about 4 minutes of gameplay to share here today, but I've actually seen a lot more than this. Press were actually able to see a live demo of basically this entire mission. And you know the best part of that live demo? It's that, unlike in this gameplay, the HUD, the heads-up display, was completely enabled. I paid a lot of attention to that, and while I don't have any footage of it, this is roughly what it looks like.
Oh yeah, I forgot that FromSoft made Metal Wolf Chaos.
This HUD more in depth later in the video so that you can understand it all. Now, I don't know why they haven't just.
That's technically a re-release, but it's a great game. I need to stream that Metal Wolf Chaos.
That I saw.
God, this looks so fucking good.
Why? But
the combat feels so smooth.
I guess I should just showcase the gameplay that I have been given.
Oh fuck! I forgot that they made Steel Battalion. Oh
to
fuck!
Infiltrate this huge facility. It's
Steel
occupied
Battalion?
by doses who.
About the sheer scale.
So the original Steel Battalion was an Xbox game, the original Xbox game that had a giant fucking controller with a million buttons on it. It basically was like it's a first-person mech game, but you actually have to control every little thing in the mech as well. So there's a bunch of buttons, and bells and whistles and whatnot. The sequel was a Kinect game.
Oh god!
So imagine taking, you know, having this giant fucking controller with a million buttons and things to do, but now it's Kinect.
Build at least has very efficient flight capability.
No, that sounds very efficient.
Oh, it is, and by is I mean it's fucking terrible, and it was one of the worst games I played that year.
Vertical and horizontal flight is a big thing in this game. The energy consumption during
this looks really good,
flight in
and
particular
I'm really excited
reminded
to play
me
it.
a lot of the early generations of Armored Core. So you can fly upwards, but it's probably near impossible.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of Armored Core 5, to be honest.
Vertical flight, which I think is a good thing, as it stops you from flying over.
And that's the last one they made back in
level
2012.
Armored Core has traditionally had, which is amazing. One thing that does seem different,
they made Monster Hunter G?
Seems like you're way more energy efficient while flying and gliding horizontally in this game, which is something that seems to be partly enabled by the Assault Boost, which is basically a dodge boost.
FromSoft made 3D dot game heroes? Oh shit, I didn't know that.
Continued overboost, so to speak.
There's a lot of games I didn't realize they made.
Let me just pause here for a second.
Because they're only known for Souls.
So
they made Enchanted Arms?
Enemies down there, and if you could see the HUD, then you would know that our lock-on has just automatically jumped onto the closest.
They make Chrome Hounds.
Our missiles are now primed, and we're now in what I'm calling a soft lock-on state. In this state, we still have really free, unrestrained, unguided movement of our mech, and it seems the lock-on can be freely moved between enemies. This should be more familiar to Armored Core fans because it's closer to the way that lock-on has traditionally worked in Armored Core, where you're responsible for keeping enemies within your sights in order to shoot at them, and the lock-on kind of does its own thing. So if we fire our missiles now, which they do, you can see one missile fly off to each nearby enemy, stunning them and giving us an opening to dash in and take them out one by one instead. Except at some point, the player locked on manually, and now we've transitioned into what I'm going to call a hard locked on state.
The movement reminds me a lot of
Now that the enemies are dead,
Virtual
hard
On,
lock
and that's
finally
and I'm
falls off. But
very okay with
wait,
that.
There's more enemies
I
up
love
top,
Virtual
so
On.
the player goes up and commits to more hard-locked combat against them. And again, in this hard-locked state, we see a lock that entirely dictates
I do think the
direction
movement looks
you're
pretty
facing.
cool.
This looks really
That
fucking
is
awesome.
not how lock-on has traditionally worked in Armored Core. In fact, the absence of hard lock-on is, I think, actually a big part of what contributed to
I like
Armored Core's traditional
the sliding,
identity.
like
So
just
instead,
how
you'll recognize this
I don't know how
lock-on
to
state
explain
from
it.
Souls. But before all the
Just
Armored
how
Core
the
fans get
sliding
upset by
operates.
this, perhaps rightfully so, remember the genius kind of is that the soft lock-on state, the traditional lock-on state, still seems to exist. And I think playing with that lock-on state will be viable, and it will give you benefits, although you're probably missing out by not hard locking on sometimes and allowing the player and their camera to be very bound to a single enemy and have your movement strafe around them perfectly instead. What's more, in this hard lock-on state, notice how all 4 missiles go to their single target here instead, as opposed to in the soft lock-on state where those missiles were spread evenly around the area to each enemy. That enables some really cool strategy, I think. And speaking of strategy, this player's combat strategy seems to be to use their machine gun to stagger these smaller enemies. Enemy stagger bars are seen here, and they build up visually just like they do in Sekiro, and you can see the moment that stagger kicks in here. In this staggered state, they've said that enemies take a ton more damage, and that makes it the perfect time to hit them with all your burst damage, which this player does with their barrage of 4 missiles. Or another thing you can do while the enemy is staggered is this. You can yeet enemies so far with this kick attack, though I feel like this enemy only flew so far because it was already staggered, though. In any other situation, the kick attack
Goofy,
probably just builds up
Yahoo!
their stagger meter instead. Next clip. The gate was a major waypoint in the showcase, and it seemed to function a lot like a fog gate would in Souls, except when I watched, the player actually took about 10 seconds to hack open this gate. They were vulnerable the entire time they were doing that, and they even got ambushed during that process, so it's a cool way to sort of stop you from progressing too far. In Souls, you can just like run past everything, so it's kind of good that they stop you doing that here. But here they enter a tight corridor, and these in Armored Core traditionally force you to fight quite differently than you would have out in the open. Often in past Armored Core games, your missiles would become useless inside, especially if they're the type that fire upwards or outwards, and your long-range weaponry might not be as good either. So that's why it's a good idea to have some close-range parts to help you out in tight spaces, like shields now, or maybe melee blades as well. Speaking of shields, they've actually added something that I've always wanted them to add in Souls, and that's a timed block system. So what we know from interviews is that shields now have this brief moment when you deploy them where their defense is way stronger. It happens here. See that pulse when they pull it out? That should be a moment of optimal block, and that's obviously an incentive to perfectly time your blocks against strong attacks rather than just keeping your shield active all the time. Next, melee weapons. You can clearly do multiple strikes with a lot of these, and having these preset animations makes me think that the blades might be exclusive to the left side, like they are in many previous Armored Core games, rather than being able to dual wield them, although I could definitely be wrong on that. Next we see the scan function for the first time. Enemies are revealed and can be locked onto through walls. I love this. Being able to peek ahead and think about your strategy is so much better than always being forced to figure things out on the fly. It enables planning based on your build, followed by execution of that plan with your reflexes and your coordination, and that is peak Armored Core to me. Speaking of customization though, next let's talk about build assembly in the garage, which is another huge design pillar of Armored Core.
Customize robots.
Here we thankfully get an overview of all of the part
favorite
categories in Armored Core 6. Here are your 4 weapon slots, your 4 frame slots, and then your booster, your FCS lock-on part, your generator, and an expansion slot. This is fewer categories than most Armored Core fans will be used to. Inside parts, hanger weapons, radiators, those are all missing here. That said, the parts that we do see previewed here do have some great depth to them, so I think that might make up for having fewer categories. For example, your generator, which governs your energy, now has cooling built into it rather than radiators being a separate part. And then certain weapons, like this laser dagger, can perform a charge attack if held, which is a depth to the gameplay. We also see certain ranged weapons that have this charging property as well. And then there's missiles, which have unique attack characteristics, as they always have, but their descriptions here are more detailed than ever. Some are capable of multi-lock, which is when missiles fire at multiple targets, which I showed off earlier. Some missiles are better for AoE, creating a damage area. Some are better for staggering enemies, like these, which contribute greatly to build-up of ACS strain. And some missiles will just be great for taking out airborne enemies, like these, which are deliberately slowed down. Missiles hound targets during lengthy airborne time, enabling heavy pressure tactics. All these build considerations are such a fun, amazing part of Armored Core that I can't wait for people to discover. And if you're a new player, I think a lot of the time you will be able to get by simply reading these written descriptions. But the real endgame in Armored Core is learning to understand the complex stats and specs of each part seen down here. Though, if you think these stats are overwhelming, I've got news for you. So, this is probably the simplified version. It reminds me a lot of Armored Core 4, where you were shown the most important stats on parts, but then you could toggle the display to reveal this. Yeah, so stats can get pretty intense, and while having a simplified view and glanceable icons is obviously the more modern approach, I really hope that they don't shy away from these overwhelming stat screens, because they are such a hallmark of the series. In the showcase, the player actually accessed this garage mid-mission after being destroyed by this quad-legged enemy. Their mid-range biped build was having a lot of trouble dealing any kind of damage to this enemy at range, so they wanted to change their build to an agile close-range one instead. And they did it all manually, and it took less than a minute, and it was so convenient. Instead of having to do the entire mission again, they simply died, they loaded up the garage from the menu, they tweaked their build, and then they returned to the checkpoint that they had unlocked in their mission. And they were back with a different build completely. But as to the fight itself, there's actually so much to break down in this fight, but the main thing I really want to talk about happens here, where they finally stagger the enemy. Whereas in Sekiro, this would enable an execution on stagger, in Armored Core 6, it's up to you to fully deliver that execution. The enemy is now taking extra damage, so if you have burst attacks,
and I'm
now's
trying
the
to pay
time.
attention.
What's more, it seems you can prolong this staggered state with certain attacks, keeping them stun-locked with the right combo, potentially, which might give a really high skill ceiling to this whole process. If you listen carefully here, you can hear a narrator say, "Alright tourist, that's enough." That's because the enemy leader of this facility has been shit-talking you this entire time. The dialogue that I heard was witty and well-delivered, and that is a very welcome change from past Armored Core games. There was also some banter between this narrator and your own female operator, who is there to support you through your missions and warn you about what's ahead. And a main boss is ahead. But before this, in the demo, the player actually called a resupply drone, replenishing their health, their repair kits, and their ammo, and
okay.
then it was time to fight this thing. A boss that has its own health and stagger meter that appears at the top of the
Reminds me
screen.
of the first boss in
Its
Duke Nukem
attacks are
Forever.
extremely well animated and telegraphed, and it has a ton of area denial and AoE, and it's just so well animated, and it looks like such a great fight. It also has 2 lock-on points, a weak spot at the front, and a shoot at the top, which I guess flying builds might be able to take more advantage of. I wonder how a slow tank build would deal with something like this, though. It seems like it would be hard to get distance and dodge with a tank, hey? Anyway, as promised, let me recreate the heads-up display in more detail, starting with the most important things. First up is your AP, your armor points, or your health, basically, which was displayed numerically and with a slider around here. When the player took damage, this number and the slider would obviously deplete, and the screen would also distort a little bit, especially at the edges, which you can kind of see here. Then there was the energy gauge seen around here. This was depleted by things like flight, quick boosting, and I think melee as well. Of course, in Armored Core, how big this bar is determined by the capacity of your generator part, and how fast it depletes and recovers is determined by the energy output of that generator and the cumulative energy drain of all of your parts. Of course, the efficiency of your boosters will probably also play a part. Above it was a stagger bar. It was empty by default, but would fill up with orange from the center, just like this, whenever you took damage, and then it would deplete if you didn't take damage for a few seconds. The same goes for enemies. If you get staggered though, I think you just sort of pause for a couple of seconds, and previous interviews seem to suggest that you'll start falling if you're in the air as well. Next, there was like a
Makes
box
sense.
here for the expansion slot. So extensions are a category of parts that have traditionally allowed you to do unique things like jam enemy radar or shoot down enemy missiles automatically. Sometimes these
not that he's very
extensions are
soft-spoken, it's making me
activated
fall
manually,
asleep.
sometimes they're passive, and
He has a very
they're
nice
like my
voice,
favorite
yes.
part category
Very
in Armored Core
soothing.
because they give a ton of character to your build. Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure the demo had no expansion part equipped, so this box was empty. Next to it were 2 bars. One was a visual indicator for your repair kits, of which the player had 3. Armored Core has never had an Estus Flask equivalent before, but it does now. These can be activated instantly
Estus Flask, that's
to
the
heal
thing
the player. And
that like you.
That's your
use
healing
to
item,
do
yes.
it, yeah.
at supply stations, which can be called
Like half the
in
Souls
certain
games have
missions,
that, right?
apparently. Underneath repair was a
All
bar
the
that
Souls
said
games
scan.
has some form of
When
Estus Flask.
activated
It's not in
to
Demon Souls.
scan surroundings for enemies, this bar would take
It's
a
not
little
in Dark
while to
Souls 2.
regenerate, and then it could just be used again.
Yes, it is.
It wasn't
Is
long,
it?
though.
'Cause I was told
like
it wasn't.
10 seconds between
It
each
is.
scan, maybe. On the bottom right were 4 familiar weapon
I don't know.
slots.
I'm just going by
They
Nikki
showed your
Jakey's Dark
total
Souls
ammo
video.
and your remaining
Or Elden
magazine
Ring
ammo
video, I should
for
say.
your left arm,
I say Dark Souls 'cause
right
he goes over
arm,
all
left
the
back,
games.
and right back
Good video,
weapons,
by the way.
respectively. This character has missiles on their right back, a machine gun on their right arm, a shield on its left back, and a blade on its left arm. Now, a recent interview stated that all 4 weapons are bound by default to all 4 controller triggers, and that all of your weapons can be fired at once, which is not how it's worked in any previous game. That sounds kind of insane, honestly, and pretend you're holding a controller. I cannot fathom, for the life of me, how you're supposed to fire all 4 weapons with your pointer and middle finger, and then doesn't that just leave your thumbs free for assault boosting and moving and interacting and changing weapons? Just your thumbs for all those actions seems very difficult, so I'm extremely keen to get a hold of a demo and see what the deal is here. There was a vertical speed
What's
gauge
the
on the
deal?
left, there was what looked like an altitude gauge on the right, there was even a compass at the bottom that was actually pretty cool because it had red dots for all of the enemies around you, which I assume would actually be pretty useful when helping to locate the enemies that are just outside your field of view. Then the mission objective was written top left, a waypoint marker was on screen for that objective, and killed enemy credit rewards would pop up on the bottom right. Of course, as mentioned earlier, the center of the
Demo's
screen
cool, but
features your
God,
fire control
nothing
system,
against this guy.
or
It's just
lock-on, essentially.
wait. He's
It's
way too
circular
soft
like it
spoken.
was
I
in
don't know if
Armored
I'm
Core
feeling
5,
bored or
and
tired.
while you're out of combat even, it stays in the center of your screen. And it has these
Very
sliders
soothing,
that
I'll give him
help
that.
you keep track of your remaining magazine capacity as you fire your left and right arm and back weapons, which I'm a huge fan of.
I actually really like this
So
UI. If it's
the
even
UI is
like
nice.
80%
It's
accurate.
super clean and it displays a ton of information.
Yeah.
But it's this lock-on behavior that I think is the most fascinating thing about Armored Core 6 so far. And
It's not too
this is
cluttered at the
part
center of the
UI that
screen,
I
and it's
kind
not
of
too hard
love
to
the
look at
most.
any
So,
corner for any
again,
pertinent
when you get in
information.
range of
And
an
I'm sure it's
enemy,
adjustable
this
in some
lock-on
way, in
element
some way.
jumps
Oh, for
over
sure.
to them, while the lock-on display itself starts to display that enemy's health and stagger meter at the top, in addition to your ammo in the bottom left and right. Inside the lock-on though, there's this little number which dictates how many of your missiles will go to this enemy should you fire them. Again, if you're soft locked on, that number will be split between nearby enemies, and if you're hard locked on, all of your missiles will go towards them. Additionally, the lock-on actually updates with an enemy's distance from you, which is extremely important information because staying at optimal weapon range is a really big thing in Armored Core. And it also shows little damage numbers which pop up as you pop off, and that's really important to
Pop up as you
give
pop off.
visual feedback on the effectiveness of your range or the effectiveness of your weapon type. You want to know if you're dealing damage, and I always loved this feature when it was added in Armored Core 4, so I'm very glad to see that return. I even noticed some little enemy status words pop up around the lockbox, like unaware would pop up if the enemy didn't know you were stealthed, and ACS load limit, I think, popped up if you staggered them. So, this lock-on is doing a lot of heavy lifting in Armored Core 6, and I love it. I'm glad they've baked so much information into this UI because that is such a huge part of what Armored Core is all about, and what their design team deserves props for is the fact that they've baked all this information in while keeping everything looking sleek and unobtrusive. It's very clever design, and I hope they show off the HUD soon because I'm probably just butchering it in Photoshop now. I have so much more to say about this demo, but it should probably wait for when we get new footage, or for if I get my hands on it, if I'm lucky. In the meantime, if you're curious about Armored Core, then please check out my recent video where I show off every single old Armored Core game. And I think that video will just always stand as a way for you guys to learn a ton about the series if you don't have the time to
God,
play
I love the
it for
original
yourself.
Armored Cores.
And
They're
I had
such
an
good
amazing time
games.
playing all of the old games.
I've never played
But
on
until next time, thank you for watching. I also want to say special thanks to Con from Bandai Australia for getting up at midnight to pass me this footage. That was so appreciated, and it's honestly half the reason I had enough time to edit all of this for you guys. So thank you, Con. And the same goes for Steven at Bandai and countless others who just enable these kind of demos and previews behind the scenes. Thank you. And if you're a content creator who couldn't get access, then you're more than welcome to react to this video and to this footage.
Oh,
I
okay,
hope
well.
that helps somewhat. But thank you again.
Oh,
I'm giving
nice.
the carte
Gave
blanche
you-
on that.
And I'll see you
Gave
next
you
time.
information.
Thanks, Vaati. It's very informative.
Then this is just going to be the unedited raw video
Yeah,
footage.
okay. Might as well watch it. Why not?
Game sounds really good too.
Yeah. Boom.
Ooh, I like that it lets you lock on through the scan.
Mm-hmm. I love all the customization too.
Mhm.
I love customization in robot games. This game is awesome. I can't wait to play it.
Yeah, that looks really good.
Looks really, really good. All right. Well, that's going to be it for me because I have to shower and go to bed. So,
Mhm.
I'm going to find someone to raid. Then I'm going to end the stream. But I had fun tonight watching this stuff.
Mhm.
Let's see. There's that ghost lady on my front page again.
Tina's still streaming as well if we want to do her.
Where is Tina? Oh, there's Tina. You know what? I don't get enough opportunities to raid Tina, so we're gonna raid Tina again.
Okay.
Wish she would update her like game. It just has special events. I guess she is watching someone else stream right now. All right. Step here. Ah, nothing. Okay. All right. All right. Raiding Tina again. So, just like before, read message if you're subbed. Not got one for you. This one. There's the Discord server. We are up to episode 20 of RPM now for Toku Tuesday. If you want to join in on that, We got 12 episodes left, so if you want to get in on that, get in on that. Find my social medias here. My YouTube channel's here.
Oh
with
shit! Hold
more
on. It looks like
videos.
Tina might be ending.
Tina might be ending. Okay. You think so?
Because she's been going for 11 and a half hours. So
Oh, okay. Well, I can cancel the raid.
yeah.
Well, in that case, maybe I will go with my first choice.
Yeah.
Tina, don't raid me. We're gonna raid Ghost Lady instead. Okay. All right. So I'll go through the spiel one more time. Ghost Lady's playing Muse Dash. So one more time, raid message if you're subbed. If you're not, you use this one. And there's the Discord. There's the social media. There's my YouTubes. New videos and just those 2 raid messages again. Like I said, this is my last stream for the week. I'll be back on Monday, probably for more catch up, or I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'll tell people on Twitter and whatnot what I'm doing. So yeah, no stream on Saturday. I've got stuff I got to do, plans and stuff, real life stuff. So, but as always, take care. Come here in a rush. Use a brush. Don't do drugs. Stay in school. Eat your teeth. See you next time on Cheat. I'm tired. I'm gonna go sleep. And well, first shower and then sleep right after this. So, go say hi to the ghost lady for me. She's very nice. We met her a couple of nights ago, and yeah. All right. Have a good night, everybody. Bye bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
I will have to go through the entirety of this game and make sure there's no other loot pictures to remove them. Yeah, but first I have to find them, so, you know.
Good. Are we free?